Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Crypto Stu here in the Crypto Stu studio. 594 subscribers. If you're one of them, welcome back. If not, please subscribe and hit the bell. I think you'll be glad you did. Welcome to the Crypto Stu experience. Well, this won't be one of my happier videos. my topic of the day is the dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin. There's a dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin, and none of the YouTubers I watch are covering it. So I have to, right? That's what I do here. So what is the dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin? I want you to think, what is the biggest threat to Bitcoin? I was at lunch, well, happy hour with a friend of mine about 6 weeks ago, and I said to him, what do you think is the biggest threat to Bitcoin right now? And me and him were in total agreement. Him and I were in total agreement. And so I'm wondering if the rest of you are in agreement as well. So think to yourself, what is the biggest threat to Bitcoin? Pause the video if you have to if you need more time. First, I'll go into what the dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin is not. It's not China FUD. It's not potential U.S. regulation. It's not quantum computing. It's not some kind of big hack or anything like that. That's not the dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin. Those are minor annoyances, but they're not the dark cloud hanging over Bitcoin. The dark cloud that's hanging over Bitcoin is a crash. And I'm not talking about a crash in Bitcoin's price, because we've already seen plenty of those. I'm talking about a crash of all of the markets. And these things happen. They're disasters of biblical proportions. And that always makes me think of this. So I'll play this for you.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
That's a crash. All right. Now, here's the thing about a crash. In a crash, everything goes down. All right. I'm going to say that again. In a crash, everything goes down. Well, what does that mean? It means the stock market goes down, Bitcoin goes down, gold goes down, silver goes down, real estate goes down, collectibles go down, altcoins get obliterated. I mean, in a crash, everything goes down. All right? Now, I know that people think of Bitcoin as a safe haven. You know what? Bitcoin's digital gold is a safe haven. In a crash, people are going to fly into Bitcoin. They're not going to fly into Bitcoin. All right? And I'm trying to help people understand. All right, so here, look, we had a mini crash, a really mini crash in March of 2020. So let's see what happened in March of 2020. This is what happens in a crash. All right, in March of 2020, the dollar shot up like a rocket. This is March of 2020. Look at that. Look at that movement on the dollar. Okay, everybody was flying into dollars. The dollar shot up like a rocket. Look what happened to gold in March of 2020. Went down like a stone. Look at silver. Falls off a cliff, right? Let's look at the S&P. Down, all right? That's what happens in a crash. In a crash, everything goes down, all right? In a crash, everything goes down. So just to illustrate what I'm talking about, I want you to imagine that we all live in this really green valley, all right? Just this grass everywhere, and we live in these nice little huts, and we have, the children are dancing and playing, and we have crops, and we sing songs every night, and everyone's just happy and dancing and prancing in the fields. And behind our valley is these mountains, because it's a mountain, you have mountains around, that's what makes it a valley, all right? So you have your mountains, but we don't go in the mountains, all right? Why don't we go in the mountains? Because the mountains suck, all right? We stay in the valley where we're happy and we're dancing. We don't go in the mountains because the mountains suck, all right? Why do the mountains suck? The mountains suck because there's mountain lions. It's cold. You could freeze to death up in those mountains. There's bears in the mountains sometimes. I don't know. People see bears. And that big spider from Lord of the Rings, that's in the mountains too. So you do not go in the mountains. You stay in the valley where you're happy and you're dancing and you're prancing. Okay? And everybody's happy and they're fine and they live in the valley for a very long time. And then one day, a 40-foot tsunami, just a 40-foot wave, just comes and wipes out the whole valley. All right? Where did everyone go? Well, they went to the mountains. But Crypto Stu, you said the mountains suck. The mountains do suck. Crypto Stu, you said there's mountain lions and bears. There are mountain lions and bears. You said it's cold. We could freeze to death. You can freeze to death. You said the spider from Lord of the Rings is in those mountains. The spider from Lord of the Rings is in those mountains. All right? Then why would they go to the mountains? Because there was a flood. There was nowhere else to go. All right? When the shit hits the fan, there's nowhere else to go. In a real tragedy, there's nowhere else to go. All right? You want an example? You want an illustration? Okay. Remember that big hurricane that hit Puerto Rico like 2-3 years ago? They had no power, but there were still gas stations, and they had generators, and so they had power because they obviously had gas. There were gas stations, and they had those little general stores attached. Well, the power was out. What were the gas stations accepting? Were they accepting Bitcoin? No. Were they accepting gold and silver? No. Were they accepting, what were they accepting? No credit cards, cash only. All right? In a real emergency, it's cash only. All right? In a crash, everything goes down. Everyone flocks into dollars. All right? Now, back to my Valley example. All right? Now, here's the thing. What would be a logical question would be, all right, well, Crypto Stu, all right, people flock into the mountains because there's a 40-foot flood. I get that. But why isn't Bitcoin one of those mountains? I mean, Bitcoin's supposed to be the future of money. Bitcoin's supposed to be digital gold. Like, why wouldn't they flock into the greatest asset that man has ever created? And that's a very good question. But here's the thing about that. Bitcoin right now is what? A $600 billion market cap, something around there? You're talking about 400 plus trillion in wealth that's going to be trying to preserve itself in a crash. 400 trillion in wealth does not try to preserve itself by flocking into a asset that has a market cap of $600 billion. That's just not how it works. I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb. I mean, you know how I've always told you that the dollars are toilet paper, and that they're printing trillions of them, and they're going to, they're just constantly deteriorating the value of the dollar. But you know what? In a crash, that's where everybody's going to go. These dollars that they're printing trillions of, that's where everybody's going to flock to in a crash. All right? In a crash, everything goes down. And the thing is, this crash, Bitcoin, it'll have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but it'll still wipe Bitcoin out. It could be another biological event like we had. It could be, what's more likely is something financial, like a bank's becoming solvent, like if Deutsche Bank goes under, or some big bank. That could cause a massive crash that ripples through all the markets. I don't know what the crash could be, but when I'm watching Data Dash and I see him say things like this, like here, it's a very positive video talking about the positive future of Bitcoin, and this is what he said. I think it was like 2 days ago.
And that kind of liquidity in this market, slowly but steadily, will get us back to the previous all-time highs and will drive us to new all-time highs, hopefully going into 2022.
That's the thing. When he start talking about 2022, and all people are talking about how, yes, in the short term, Bitcoin's bearish, but in the long term, it's really bullish. And I agree with that. No one loves Bitcoin more than me, all right? But if there's a crash, Bitcoin's going to go down with it, all right? And I don't know that we have that kind of time. I'll tell you that there's some very smart people who think that, who basically call, they call what America has a Jenga economy, meaning that it's made of all these bricks that are all like hanging by a thread, and you don't know which one's going to go, but you know one of them will, and when it does, the whole thing's going to come down. All right? And one thing I'm seeing that I really don't like is how the 10-year treasury is going. The yield on the 10-year treasury is going down, which means people are flocking into the 10-year treasury, and the 10-year treasury sucks. The 10-year treasury sucks. You know what an interest rate on a 10-year treasury of 1.18% means? It means, suppose I wanted to borrow $1,000 from you, and you go, all right, you can borrow $1,000. What do I get for interest? And I'll say, I'll give you $12 a year for 10 years, and at the end of the 10 years, I'll give you $1,000 back. Like, what do you think of that deal? Stinks, right? But meanwhile, they're buying these things up like crazy. Why? Because it's safe, right? This is a flock to safety. And maybe it'll turn around, or maybe some people see something on the horizon and they're heading to the mountains to get a good spot now. I don't know, all right? I don't know that there's going to be a crash. But I know that if you're invested in anything, the stock market, real estate, Bitcoin, they're all vulnerable to this. In a crash, everything goes down. All right? Well, what am I doing? Am I selling my Bitcoin? No. Am I selling my Ethereum? No. All right? Well, what am I doing? I'll tell you what I'm doing. And this is the point of the video. And if anyone listens to me, that if I help anybody, then that's great. Because that's what my channel's about. I'm trying to help people. What I am doing right now is I am building up a cash position. And I understand that dollars are toilet paper, and I understand that there's a lot of inflation, and I understand that the government keeps printing trillions of dollars. I get it. But what I'm doing right now is building up a cash position out of my earned money, out of the money that I have coming in. I'm building up a cash position. Because if there is a crash, then I'll have cash on the side that I can use to scoop up the cheap Bitcoin. Because the first things that are going to rise from the ashes of a crash, I don't think the crash is going to be very long-lived, because the government can't afford a long-lived crash. Just the economics of all of it, they just can't. So what their response to a crash will be to print money like you've never seen before. I'm talking about, you think 6 trillion a year was a lot? I'm talking 60 trillion a year. I'm talking universal basic income, all kinds of programs like they never even thought of. And the side that's been trying to stop it, they won't even try to stop it anymore, because after a crash, it'll be people no longer need this money for stuff that they want. They need the money for stuff that they need, and nobody's going to want to stand in the way of that. So I'm talking 60 trillion in government printing. All right. So the first things that rise from the ashes out of that crash will be gold, silver, and Bitcoin, real money. All right. So where I want to be is I want to have some cash before those programs go into account, before they rev up the money printer even more than it's revved up now. I want to have some dollars on the side so that cheap Bitcoin, when after the crash, if it's there, I want to be there to be able to scoop it up. So that's what I'm doing. I'm building up a cash position in case there's a crash, and I'm still holding on to my Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other garbage I own. Those altcoins that do also so well. In case there isn't a crash, because I don't know the future, but I know that what I can be is prepared for possible eventualities. And I'm really seeing, like, of the economists that I follow, 50-50 on whether this crash could happen. And they all say, well, I know something bad's coming, but I don't know what it'll be and I don't know when. Well, that doesn't really help, does it? But what will help is if just what I'm doing for myself is I'm building up a cash position so that if there is a crash, I'm prepared for it. So that's what I'm doing, and that's my video. I hope that helps somebody. I don't know. That's it. I promise to do some happy videos in the very near future, and I am still very, very bullish on Bitcoin long term. I'm not selling any of my Bitcoin. I'm not selling any of my Ethereum. But yeah, in a crash, everything goes down, and you need to understand that. So that's why I made the video. Until next time, Crypto Stew, signing off.